Authenticity is the future currency. We now live in the world where we have limitless entertainment now at a touch of a button. And now with AI generated content, I think more than ever we need to relearn how to become self-reliant in genuine creative expression. Not only to entertain, but to communicate our spirit to ourselves and our local community, which creates genuine bonds of belonging. So let's discuss how I think we can do this by reviving what they called in the Highlands Ceilidh culture. And I mean real Ceilidhs, not the Victorian stuff. I'll also share why I hate X Factor and other TV talent shows, which I think have robbed us of the confidence to express ourselves. So stay tuned. Hi folks, welcome to another pondering video here on the Found Abbey Deep Dive channel. So we have just finished the first ever Resilient Roots gathering. I've been here in the woods for about a week. First few days just preparing for the students to arrive. And then we had 4 absolute magical days with about 10 people here in the woods, living and breathing the philosophy of the school Resilient Roots. And honestly, it's been one of the most fun and profound weekends of my life. And that's, yeah, I'm saying that genuinely. Yeah, it's just been so magical to be able to set up a short-term living experience that really, yeah, gets to the roots, gets to the bones of what I've been trying to express for many years. So I'll share a bit more about the gatherings, probably in some future ponderings. There's definitely many pondering inspiration I got from this weekend. But simply put, we had 4 days with some of the students from Resilient Roots, and it was essentially a wilderness skills course mixed with a retreat. So we would spend the mornings in detachment, i.e. using mindfulness and light movement to warm up our attention for the day. We would then spend late mornings and early afternoons in discipline, i.e. focused lessons, mainly on wilderness living skills, shelter, water, fire, foraging, food, things like that. And then late afternoon on into the evening, we explored play, i.e. just free time for people to roam around the woods, be humans, climb a tree, play in the water, whatever you want. And yeah, one of the main things that I wanted to do, or what I felt was very essential for this gathering, was to invite people to put their smartphones away for the whole weekend. So we had this box, this old ammo box, which makes a really loud noise when you open it. So it's kind of like the box of shame if someone tries to get their phone again. We had that, and I just, at the start of it, I invited people to put their phones away. And, there was a time, late afternoon, where people could access them to contact loved ones if they needed. But it was an invitation to take an opportunity, I would say, to just not have their phones easily accessible, which, let's face it, the majority of people now in the 21st century are highly addicted to them, including me. So, there was definitely some fear in some people's eyes when I suggested this. But when we did a debrief of the gathering, it was probably the most common high point for everyone was just have a few days where they were not looking at their phone. And I think what it's made me realize is just like, it's so rare to be hanging out with people for an extended time period where people's attention is just not scattered, it's not pooled, and it actually gives you an opportunity to really talk to each other. like genuinely get to some deep stuff. And that was, for me, some of the highlights of the gathering was the conversations that just authentically happened in between the lessons, in between the survival lessons. And a common one that kept happening was navigating artificial intelligence, navigating, technology, our phones. And my friend Jason, who you've probably seen in some of my Fan Dabby Dozy videos, he's been in some of my adventures, he said something that I just loved, and he said, authenticity will be the future currency. Authenticity will be the future currency. And he said this, we're talking about AI, because let's face it, we are already becoming very reliant on artificial intelligence to create things. I certainly use it to do boring stuff, right? Like accumulating data, like searching keyword stuff and things. But more and more people are using it to create things. And this whole fear about AI generated art and music, okay, it's been that conversation's been going on a long while. But to be honest, I've never been that scared of it, because artificial intelligence doesn't actually have a lived experience. And all it can do is gather things that have already been created and regurgitate it, slightly mix it up. So anyway, these sort of conversations were just spontaneously popping up in conversation at the gathering, which was just so great to hear. Now, the final night of the gathering, I had scheduled in a ceilidh. Now, what's a ceilidh? These days, most people when they think of a ceilidh, they think of a Scottish country dancing. Certainly when I was at school, in your final years you get, well, they call it social dancing, but generally it's ceilidh dancing. And more often than not, when you see an event, it's called a ceilidh, it means Scottish dancing. And don't get me wrong, dancing is awesome, that's great. But before that, that sort of idea of a ceilidh is really a Victorian idea. It's been thingified as just dancing. But before that, ceilidh just meant people getting together and sharing creative things. And I mean anything. It could include dancing, but it could be stories, poems, riddles, music, songs, jokes, anything. That's what a ceilidh was. And if you look at some old Highland books, they don't describe it necessarily as an event. Now when we use it in language, we say, I went to the ceilidh. There is a ceilidh on at Saturday night. It's an event. But if you look in the old books, it's described more like a verb. We were ceilidhing. We ceilidhed all night, which is quite interesting. Now, just from, especially the last few years, getting to know people, through the Shieling Collective and other things I've been involved in, I feel like I've become fairly well practiced and familiar with this traditional ceilidh culture. Just sharing authentic expressions. But vast majority of people in the Western world are not used to this. And in fact, there's a lot of fear around expressing yourself. And this is why I hate talent shows, which I'll get to. But so the last night of the gathering, as I said, I scheduled in a ceilidh. And like what mostly happens is that a lot of people were scared to share anything because they thought, oh, I'm not a singer, I'm not a musician. There's also a lot of fear now in our culture that if you show off something, or if you play a song or share a poem, then it's showing off. It's like, look at me, look how famous and amazing and talented I am. But the thing is, if you look at some of the earliest recordings of genuine ceilidhs being captured, right? Highlanders sharing poems and songs. Some of the earliest recordings we have, like late 1800s, sometimes, honestly, in terms of like musical ability, they're pretty bad, right? People are singing out of tune, out of time, right? Definitely if they're on X Factor, Simon Cowell would be ripping the shit out of them. But it doesn't matter, because in them, in the words, in the spirit in which they are expressed, is genuine lived experience, genuine happiness, genuine joy, genuine sorrow, genuine grief, right? That, to me, is what makes a good song, a good poem, or whatever. Now, of course, in the past and today, of course you have people who are more musically gifted and things like that, and these people will always be more celebrated, and that's good. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, let some people rise to the top because of their abilities. But what is so tragic is that people feel that unless they're that good, they don't have the right to share anything. And I think that is really tragic and is actually dangerous for the human race in the future. So why is that so tragic? If someone came up to you and said, I'm feeling happy, or I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling grief, I'm feeling excitement, you wouldn't think, oh, don't be a show-off, look at this person, they're expressing themselves. Of course you wouldn't. You would stop and listen. But for some reason in our culture, there's this fear, if you sing a song, or you tell a story, or you read a poem, that it's showing off, and you have to be good at it. But, people who study the origins of language, study the human brain, some people believe that actually music, dancing, poetry, well, certainly music and dancing is older than spoken language. Certainly much older than written language, right? Written language is relatively recent. So, music and dance is more ancient than spoken language. So, having this fear to express yourself is denying actually a more ancient way of expressing yourself, if that makes sense. So anyway, it came to the Ceilidh night, and a few folk were really nervous about sharing something, and like, oh no, I'm not very good, me and Jason, we're essentially saying what I'm saying right now. It's just like, look, don't worry about it. It's not about being good, it's about having genuine expression. And yeah, luckily we managed to pull some people out their shell, and they played the whistle, or played the drum, or sang a song. And for some people, it was the first time they'd ever sang in front of people. Or at least in their adult life. And I thought, wow, that's actually quite a special thing to pull from people. And this is why, in terms of the Resilient Roots curriculum, I'm still working on some of the higher modules, some of the later modules, but I want to explore human belonging, and I am fairly certain that I want somewhere in the curriculum to have this encouragement for people to look within themselves for creative expression. Now, of course, we have a range of personality types. Some people are just born with more creativity than others, and that's fine. Some people are more kind of managerial, we're all different wired, right? But even if you can't create your own music, you can still, right, music or a song or a poem still resonates with us, right? Most people still like a good story or a good poem or whatever. So you can still learn. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to come, you have to create everything, but at least learning a song or a poem that you like and saying it, reading it out, it's still coming from you, right? I'm certainly guilty of every time I want to, say, motivate myself. If I want to do a workout, then I put in music, pump up music, let's get after it. If I want to, do some cooking or do the dishes, I put on some bit more kind of repetitive beat music to get into a flow. Which is great, it's fine. You know, of course we're all going to do that. But you are becoming reliant on someone else's expression. You're becoming reliant on that energy coming from an external source. Which again, it's not about judgment, it's not about saying what's good and bad, but there's some sort of power when that can come from you, from your own lungs, from your own thought, from your own spirit. And certainly when I've done sort of solo survival trips, solo wilderness trips, I'm not particularly good at the flute, right? In fact, the only time I practice my flute is when I'm out, and usually in barren places so I don't piss people off. It's a good place to practice. There's something when you feel a bit lonely, a bit existential, a bit fearful, to bring out a musical instrument and just start playing it. And don't worry, there's no one around to judge what's good or bad, right? You just play from the soul. And with practice, almost anyone can get something decent enough to share. And that, to me, is empowerment on a sort of higher level of human needs. And my whole Resilient Roots curriculum is about empowering people right at the dirt level, the base level, right? It's learning the basic survival skills, how to meet your needs for core body temperature, managing layers, creating shelter, lighting fires, purifying water, hunting, fishing, foraging, food, right? That's the foundations of empowerment of our needs. But when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling unmotivated, when you're feeling existential, there's nothing like someone cracking out a good tune, a good story, a good poem, right? That's what gets you up and going, that's what gets you motivated. And yeah, there's something, especially when you have a tribe of people, a group of people, and we all have a diversity of skills, certainly you want at least one person in your tribe to be a good entertainer, to be the bard, to be the musician, to be the poet. So this brings me on to why I hate X Factor and these other sort of talent shows, which I didn't really realize how much I hated them until it came to this Kaylee at Resilient Roots, and I was trying to convince people to overcome their fear of sharing creative expression. So it became a bit of a running joke. Now, of course, as I said before, in some cases there's nothing wrong with separating the wheat from the chaff, right? We're always going to celebrate people who are the best at things. That's great, right? Of course, I'm not against celebrating people who are actually good at things. But these talent shows, the public humiliation of people when they're not good is put the fear into everyone. Now, okay, someone at the gathering did make the point where, okay, if someone's really cocky and think they're good, maybe it's, you know, and they think they're as good as Beyonce, and then they get the shit ripped out of them, then okay, maybe sometimes that's healthy, right? A bit of a ego balance. But most of the time, let's face it, it has created fear in genuine expression. And what else has it done? X Factor, even just any kind of, often a school that's judging creativity, right? It's created its own scale of what's good or bad, and then it's judging everyone on a created scale, right? It might not be necessarily a completely universal agreed scale on what's good or bad, but it's just put the fear in people. It's put the feeling that if you express yourself, you have to be good enough to be on a talent show. It's like people, I don't know, it's like got deep into our psyche that even if you're just sharing a song with a group of people in the woods, it's like, you know, Simon Cowell's waiting there to hit the buzzer and to tell you how shite you are. And also, you know, of course these talent shows are just huge music industries, and what they are doing, it's extractive, like many things in our Western culture. You you hype people up with this idea of fame and money and recognition, and you like cattle, right? They hoard them into these huge stadiums, and they line them up, and they separate the wheat from the chaff, and then they put them on stage. And okay, it's dressed up like a celebration when they pick people who have got genuine, awesome talent. And they dress it up like it's a good thing. But as soon as that person's got famous, they've been signed in a contract, right? They release a fucking Christmas #1, and then what happens? You never hear from that person again, right? It's rare, other than a few cases of people who won it, it's rare that they make a genuine career out of it. But of course, the system that funneled them in, the creative farm, keeps going, keeps making money. Next year, it's like, all right, we're done with you. Yeah, you can retire now, you can disappear, you can start appearing on random adverts because you ran out of money in a few years' time. And then they do it again. And that's why I hate it. That's why I hate X Factor and all these talent shows. And this is why I think we should revive Ceilidh culture, genuine Ceilidh culture. Now, okay, because it's got a Gaelic word, people might think, okay, that's maybe not my culture, I'm not allowed to do that, but that's nonsense. Humans have always done that, especially if you're in parts of the world with long winters. You got nothing else to do, right? You're sitting around the fire, keeping warm. What keeps you motivated? Listen to stories, listening to songs, right? Listen to poems. So, for humans to really kind of, I don't know, to stay human, I feel like we need to have more of these gatherings away from technology to express ourselves. Because, right, it's really easy, if someone's got a phone and a speaker, as soon as there's any uncomfortable feeling of silence, then they put on some tunes in the background, right? Which I'm not saying is bad, but if you never get a chance of not doing that, then you miss the opportunity to grow and to harvest something that's from within you rather than from without you. And as I said before, AI, all the AI created stuff, it's only creating stuff that's already out there. It's essentially now just a more efficient form of the X Factor, right? That now everyone has access to, where it goes out into the wider internet and harvests what's already been created and creates what it thinks is creativity. And if people never have an experience of genuine lived creativity and genuine listening of people expressing themselves, then they think that's art, right? They think that's creativity. And the conversation with Jason is that if you project that into the future, all you're going to happen is have the vast majority of the people thinking and listening the same way, listening to the same things. And then, because the universe is always changing, always throwing new challenges, there won't be enough diversity to actually meet these challenges. And this is where genuine authenticity could become the currency. You know, especially with money, with insane inflation, people talking about, you know, universal basic income and things like that. How are people actually gonna, you know, express to share value? Potentially, there might be a time in human history where we desperately need people who can actually think outside the box, who can actually express themselves in authentic ways. So, folks out there, I encourage you to invite friends, invite family, and rather than putting on background music, rather than putting on a movie that tells you a story, why not sit in a circle, crack out a few drinks, cup of tea, whatever your thing is, and just say, right, who's got a tune? Who's got a poem? Who's got a story? And share it. And I think you're doing yourself a favor, and you're actually creating genuine bonds of belonging, because there's something about, in the same way it's meaningful when you express something, you express a real feeling, I feel this, and someone actually listens to you. That's how you create friendship and relationship. Now do that with a song. So here's a song I wrote when I was feeling really depressed, and people genuinely listen to it. And don't judge. Don't hit a big buzzer and wah, that's shite, off you go. It's just like, wow, I heard that coming from your soul. Well done. And that's self-reliance and authenticity. So there's a ponder for you. I feel like I've got many ponderings from this Resilient Roots gathering. If you want to check out Resilient Roots community, we're actually doing a live call on the subject on creative expression on the last Thursday of this month. I think it's the 25th of September. 5 p.m. We do live calls last Thursday of every month. It's always a wilderness skill, a practice from home. That could be a craft. This month it's making a primitive weapon or fishing kit, pretty fun. And the pondering is this creative expression. So if you want to join in, I'll put a link to Resilient Roots below. And we'll be doing another gathering here in the woods next year. So hopefully see some of you there. Chitty bye and have fun creating.